If the person who destroyed your family wasn't a stranger, but the daughter-in-law you once welcomed with open arms, what would you do? I heard my son's voice tremble as he confessed a truth so devastating it shattered our family in a single night. "Mom, it was her," he whispered from his hospital bed, tears streaming down his face. "Sienna made me do it. She wanted your house. She said once you're gone, everything becomes ours." I'm a 62-year-old mother who learned that sometimes the enemy sleeps under your own roof, smiles at your dinner table, and calls you Mom while plotting your downfall. My name is Evelyn Moore, and until 6 months ago, I believed my life was exactly where it should be. At 62, I had just retired from Harper & Wells Consulting in Burlington, Vermont, where I'd spent 30 years climbing from receptionist to senior administrative coordinator. My husband Richard had passed 5 years prior, leaving me with our colonial home on Maple Street and our only son, Ethan. Ethan was 38, successful, handsome in that understated way that reminded me of his father. He worked as a financial analyst downtown and had married Sienna Brooks 3 years ago. Sienna was 35, sharp as a razor's edge, with perfectly manicured nails and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. She worked in pharmaceutical sales, always dressed impeccably, always had the right thing to say at family gatherings. The first crack appeared during Sunday dinner last January. I'd made Ethan's favorite pot roast, the way my mother taught me, the way I'd been making it for 40 years. Sienna pushed the meat around her plate, her nose slightly wrinkled. "Mom's pot roast not to your liking?" Ethan asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "Oh, it's fine," Sienna said, that practiced smile appearing. "Just a bit heavy for my digestion. You know how traditional cooking can be. So much fat and salt." I watched my son's face change, watched him push his own plate away slightly. "Yeah. Mum, maybe you could try some healthier recipes. Sienna found this great Mediterranean cookbook." That was the moment. That precise moment when I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. My son, who used to beg for seconds and thirds of that pot roast, was now looking at it like it was something shameful. "Of course," I heard myself say. "I'll look into it." Sienna's smile widened, victorious. "I'll send you some links. Evelyn, there are wonderful blogs about healthy eating for seniors." Seniors. The word hung in the air like a slap. The changes came gradually after that. Ethan started cancelling our weekly coffee dates. "Sienna thinks we should establish better boundaries," he explained over the phone. "She says enmeshment between mothers and sons can be unhealthy for marriages." Enmeshment. Another word that felt foreign coming from my son's mouth. Then came the forgotten birthday. For 38 years, Ethan had never missed my birthday. We had traditions: breakfast at Penny's Diner, a walk through the waterfront park, dinner at the house with German chocolate cake, his father's favourite. But this year, April 15th came and went with nothing but a text message at 9:43 p. "Happy birthday, Mum. Busy day. Hope it was good." I later learned from my neighbour, Mrs. Patterson, that she'd seen Ethan's car at his house all day. They'd had a pool party, posted photos all over social media. Apparently, Sienna in a designer swimsuit, Ethan grilling, their friends laughing with champagne glasses raised. My birthday had simply been erased. But the worst part wasn't the neglect. It was the narrative Sienna was crafting. I started hearing things from mutual acquaintances, little comments that painted a picture I didn't recognize. Sienna mentioned you've been having memory issues. That must be so hard for Ethan. I heard you've been calling them at all hours. Boundaries are so important, aren't they? Sienna says you refuse to downsize that big house. It must be such a burden at your age. Each lie was wrapped in concern, delivered with just enough truth to make it believable. Yes. I lived alone in a 4-bedroom house. Yes. I had called them late once, when I'd fallen and twisted my ankle. Yes. I sometimes forgot where I put my reading glasses. But Sienna transformed these normal moments into evidence of my declining competence. I tried talking to Ethan about it. We met at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory. He arrived 15 minutes late, checking his phone constantly. "Mum, Sienna's just concerned about you," he said, not meeting my eyes. "She has experience with this. Her grandmother had dementia." "Ethan, I'm 62, not 92. I just retired from a job that required me to manage complex scheduling for 12 executives." He sighed. That new, condescending sigh I'd grown to hate. Denial is common. "Mum?" Sienna says. I interrupted. "Do you have any thoughts that don't begin with those 2 words anymore?" His face flushed red, angry in a way I'd never seen directed at me. "She's my wife. Mom. Maybe if you made more effort to accept her, to respect our marriage." Respect? The word came out sharper than intended, like the respect she showed when she threw away your father's watch because it looked outdated in your new house. Ethan stood abruptly. "Dad's been gone 5 years. Mum, at some point, you need to stop living in the past." As I watched him leave, his shoulders rigid with an anger that wasn't his own, I realized this wasn't just about a difficult daughter-in-law. This was something calculated, methodical. Sienna wasn't just creating distance between us. She was systematically erasing me from my son's life, replacing every memory, every tradition, every bond with her own version of reality. That night, I sat in my kitchen, staring at the empty chair where Ethan used to sit during his visits. And I knew. This was war. But I didn't yet understand that in Sienna's mind, the war had already been won. The doorbell rang at 7:30 on a Thursday morning in May. I was still in my robe, coffee barely touched, when I opened the door to find Ethan and Sienna standing there with suitcases. "Surprise!" Sienna chirped, pushing past me into the foyer. "We're having our kitchen renovated. Didn't Ethan tell you we'd be staying here for a few weeks?" I looked at my son, who avoided my gaze while hauling in luggage. "Must have slipped my mind," he mumbled. "Slipped your mind," I repeated. But Sienna was already directing Ethan upstairs. "We'll take the master bedroom," she announced. "It has the best natural light, and I need good lighting for my morning yoga." "That's my bedroom," I said, my voice steady despite the shock. She paused on the stairs, turning with that practiced surprise. "Oh, Evelyn, surely you don't need all that space. The guest room would be so much cozier for you, less to maintain." Before I could respond, she was moving again, her heels clicking against my hardwood floors like a countdown to something I couldn't yet name. Within hours, my home transformed. Sienna's skincare products colonized my bathroom counter. Her supplements took over the kitchen cabinets. My grandmother's quilt was folded and shoved in the hallway closet. "Too dusty," Sienna explained. "My allergies. You understand?" The first night, I cooked dinner as I always did when Ethan visited. Halfway through preparation, Sienna appeared in the kitchen. "Oh, Evelyn, we should have mentioned. We're doing intermittent fasting. We don't eat after 6 p.m. It was 6:45. But don't let us stop you from enjoying your meal. Although eating late isn't great for digestion at your age." That became the pattern. Every routine I had was wrong, outdated, unhealthy, or inconsiderate. My morning news was too loud. My afternoon tea was at the wrong time. My evening reading lamp was too bright. "House rules," Sienna announced on day 3, actually posting a typed list on my refrigerator. "Quiet hours from 8 p.m. to 9 a.m. No cooking with strong smells. Bathroom schedules to maximize efficiency. Temperature set to 68 degrees. No adjustments." "This is my house," I finally said, my hands shaking as I pulled down the list. "Mum, please," Ethan interjected, suddenly appearing. "Sienna's just trying to help us all coexist peacefully. Why do you have to make everything difficult?" The question hit me like cold water. I was making things difficult in my own home by the second week. I had become a ghost in my own house. I ate breakfast in my room, the guest room now, to avoid Sienna's commentary on my food choices. I spent afternoons at the library to escape the constant criticism. When I returned, often I'd find things moved, changed, discarded. "Where's my husband's photograph from the mantel?" I asked one evening. "Oh, that old thing." Sienna didn't look up from her phone. "I packed it safely. The frames didn't match the aesthetic. I'm redecorating to make the space more contemporary. You'll love it." "You had no right." "Mom." Ethan's voice was sharp. "Sienna's an interior designer on the side. She's doing us a favor. Can't you just be grateful?" Interior designer on the side. This was the first I'd heard of it, but I saw the look in my son's eyes, the warning, the exhaustion, the plea to just go along. So I did. The breaking point came when Mrs. Patterson knocked on my door one afternoon. I answered to find her looking concerned. "Evelyn? Dear, I wanted to check on you. Sienna told me you've been having episodes. She said you've been confused, leaving the stove on, forgetting where you are. She said what? She's worried about you living alone once they move back out. She mentioned something about power of attorney, maybe looking into assisted living options. She asked if I'd noticed any concerning behaviors. My blood turned to ice. And what did you tell her? That you seemed perfectly fine to me. But Evelyn, the way she talked, so concerned, so detailed about your supposed symptoms. I wanted to warn you." That night, I couldn't sleep. At 2:15 a.m., I heard voices from the kitchen. I crept to the top of the stairs, staying in the shadows. "Just need her to sign here and here," Sienna was saying. "Once we have financial power of attorney, we can start the process." "I don't know. Sienna. She's not actually incompetent. Not yet." Sienna's voice was cold, calculated, but with the right documentation, the right witnesses to her episodes, the right medical opinion. "Dr. Harrison owes me a favor from the Xerox account. He'll write whatever assessment we need." This feels wrong. What's wrong is her sitting on all this equity while we're drowning in my student loans. Your inheritance shouldn't have to wait until she's 90. This house alone is worth $800,000. Think what we could do with that money. Baby? I heard a chair scrape. What if she fights it? Who'd believe her? The confused old woman who can't remember her own birthday against her concerned son and daughter-in-law. Besides, Once she's in Sunshine Manor, she'll be so medicated she won't even remember she had a house. My hand covered my mouth to stifle a gasp. Sunshine Manor. I knew that place. It was where they sent people to disappear, to fade away on cocktails of medications until they didn't remember their own names. I love you, I heard Ethan say, and the words were a knife in my heart. You always know what's best for us. I crept back to my room, my prison, and sat on the bed, shaking. My son, my baby boy, was planning to steal my home, my freedom, my life. And Sienna had orchestrated it all. But she'd made one mistake. She'd assumed I was already beaten, already broken. She didn't know that before I was a retiree, before I was a widow, before I was even a mother. I was Evelyn Shaw, the woman who built Harper and Wells' entire administrative system from scratch, who survived Richard's death and kept going, who raised a son alone for 5 years. Sienna wanted my house, she'd have to fight for it. And I'd just learned exactly what kind of war she was waging. The transformation of my son accelerated after that night. Ethan became someone I didn't recognize, a stranger wearing my child's face. He stopped making eye contact. His words, when he spoke to me at all, were carefully scripted, always ending with Sienna thinks or Sienna says. I was no longer his mother. I had become the help. Evelyn, the bathroom needs cleaning. Sienna would call out, not even using my name half the time. The kitchen floor looks sticky. Did you forget to mop yesterday? And Ethan would just sit there, scrolling through his phone, pretending not to hear his wife ordering his mother around like hired help. One morning, I was preparing breakfast when Sienna walked in, nose wrinkled. What is that smell? Bacon and eggs, Ethan's favorite. Not anymore. She dumped the entire pan into the trash. We're plant-based now. I thought we discussed this. Your memory really is getting worse, isn't it? Ethan. My son looked up from his laptop. Yeah. Mom? We told you yesterday. Maybe you should write things down. We hadn't discussed anything, but I saw the game now. Every normal moment of forgetfulness would be catalogued, exaggerated, weaponized. I started keeping a journal hidden in my car, documenting everything. The gaslighting, the lies, the steady erosion of my identity in my own home. The Thursday afternoon, when I returned from grocery shopping, I found Sienna hosting a book club in my living room. 6 women I'd never seen before sat on my furniture, drinking wine from my wedding china. Oh, there she is, Sienna announced with false brightness. Ladies, this is Ethan's mother. She lives with us. She lives with us, in my own house. How wonderful that you take care of her. One woman cooed. It must be so challenging with her condition. I stood frozen as Sienna launched into a performance worthy of an Oscar. The concerned daughter-in-law, selflessly caring for her husband's declining mother. She spoke of my episodes, my confusion, my increasing needs, with such practiced sorrow that even I almost believed her. Just last week, she tried to cook at 3 a.m. We found her standing at the stove, completely confused. Weren't you? Evelyn. Every eye turned to me with pity. Denial would only confirm my confusion in their minds. Agreement would validate the lie. I simply turned and walked upstairs, hearing the sympathetic murmurs behind me. That evening, I was folding laundry when I heard Ethan on the phone in the hallway. Yes, Dr. Harrison. My mother? Evelyn Moore, 72 years old. 72, I was 62. Memory issues, yes. Confusion? Aggression sometimes? My wife can provide detailed documentation. Next Thursday at 2 perfect. I confronted him immediately. I heard your call. I'm not 72, and I'm not seeing any Dr. Harrison. He didn't even flinch. Mom, you're confused again. You agreed to this yesterday. The appointment is for your own good. I did not agree. Mom, please. His voice rose, and Sienna appeared as if summoned. She's having another episode. Oh, Evelyn. Sienna sighed, pulling out her phone. Let me record this for the doctor. Ethan, ask her what day it is. Stop it, I shouted. I know exactly what day it is. It's Thursday, June 15th, and you're both trying to make me look crazy. Sienna kept recording, narrating softly. Patient becoming agitated, showing signs of paranoia, claims family members are plotting against her. I lunged for the phone, and she stepped back, still recording. Now showing physical aggression. Ethan, we may need to consider immediate intervention. My son grabbed my wrists, not hard, but firm, restraining me. Mum, calm down, please, you're scaring us. Scaring them, I looked into his eyes, searching for any trace of the boy who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms, who made me Mother's Day cards with crayon hearts, who promised he'd take care of me when I got old. There was nothing there. Nothing but Sienna's influence, her words, her agenda. That night, they locked my bedroom door from the outside. For everyone's safety, Sienna explained through the wood. Until you're feeling more like yourself. I sat on the bed, listening to them moving around my house, and I understood with crystal clarity what was happening. This wasn't just about money anymore. Sienna was enjoying this. She fed on control, on the systematic destruction of everything I was. The next morning, the lock was gone, but the message was clear. I was a prisoner, waiting for transfer to a more permanent facility. At dinner, Sienna placed a bowl of soup in front of me. It tasted wrong, bitter underneath the vegetables. Within an hour, I was dizzy, disoriented. I could hear them talking, but the words seemed far away. See how confused she gets in the evenings? Sienna's voice floated through the fog. It's called sundowning, classic sign of dementia. I wanted to scream that she'd drugged me, but my tongue felt thick, useless. Ethan's face swam into view, concerned but distant. Maybe we should call the ambulance, he was saying. No need. Sienna replied smoothly. I gave her something to help her sleep. She'll be fine by morning, but this proves she needs professional care. They helped me to bed, and I heard Sienna whisper to Ethan. Next week, it'll all be over. The house will be ours, and she'll be somewhere safe, getting the help she needs. I hate seeing her like this, Ethan said, and for a moment, he sounded like my son again. I know, baby, but sometimes the kindest thing is to make the hard decisions for them. She'll thank us once she's properly medicated and stable. As the drugs pulled me under, I had one clear thought I had to get out. Tomorrow, before they could complete their plan, before my son was lost to me forever. But I was wrong about having until tomorrow. At 4:23, I woke to the sound of sirens and Sienna's voice, theatrical with panic. Yes, we need help. My mother-in-law is having a severe episode. She's been diagnosed with dementia, and she's become violent. We're afraid for our safety. The bedroom door burst open. EMTs, police. Sienna crying perfectly timed tears, and Ethan standing behind her. his face a mask of practiced concern. "Mom," he said softly, "don't fight them. This is for your own good." As they prepared the restraints, I looked at my son one last time. "Ethan, please. You know this isn't true." He turned away, walking into Sienna's waiting arms. "I'm sorry, Mom, but you're sick. You need help." That's when I knew. My son wasn't just manipulated or confused. He was gone, replaced by someone who would lock his mother away from money and a manipulator's approval. But what they didn't know was that Mrs. Patterson had been watching and recording, and she had already called my lawyer. The hospital room was cold and sterile. Nothing like the psychiatric ward they'd intended for me. My lawyer, Marcus Brennan, had arrived just as they were preparing to transfer me to Sunshine Manor. Mrs. Patterson's videos had been enough to halt everything, at least temporarily. "They can't hold you without proper evaluation," Marcus had said, his voice cutting through the chaos. "And I've already arranged for an independent psychiatric assessment." Sienna's perfect mask had slipped for just a moment, revealing something vicious underneath. Now, 3 days later, I was cleared for release. No dementia, no confusion, just elevated stress levels and traces of zolpidem in my system, a sedative I'd never taken voluntarily. But it was the phone call that changed everything. "Mom." Ethan's voice was different, weak, scared. "Ethan, where are you?" "I'm at Burlington General. I had an accident." My heart stopped. Despite everything, he was still my son. What happened? "Car accident. Last night. His voice cracked. "Mum, can you come? Please, Sienna isn't. She won't." I found him in room 307, his left arm in a cast, bruises blooming across his face. He looked younger somehow, vulnerable in the hospital gown. "She left," he said before I could speak. The moment the police said I'd been drinking, she didn't even ask if I was okay. "Ethan, I wasn't drunk. Mom, I had 1 beer at dinner, but my vision went blurry, same as you described. The same thing that happened to you when she—" He couldn't finish the sentence. I sat beside his bed, not touching him. Not yet. "She's been drugging me too," he continued, tears running down his face. "Smaller doses, to keep me compliant," she said, "to help with my anxiety. I found the pills in her vitamin bottles, the same ones she was giving you." "Why are you telling me this now?" He turned to look at me then, and for the first time in months, I saw my son, the real Ethan, not Sienna's puppet. Because when I called her from the ambulance, blood running down my face, you know what she said? She asked about your power of attorney papers, not if I was dying, not if I was scared. She wanted to know if the papers were still in the car, if the police might find them. His voice grew stronger, angrier. And then she said, "This is what happens when you don't follow the plan. Ethan, your mother should have been gone by now." "Gone," I repeated. "Mom." His voice broke completely. "Mom, it was her. All of it. She made me do it. She convinced me you were sick. She showed me articles about early onset dementia, made me track your symptoms. Every normal thing became evidence. You forgetting where you put your keys meant cognitive decline. You tearing up at Dad's photo meant emotional instability." He grabbed my hand with his good one. "She said once you were gone, really gone, everything would be ours. The house, Dad's life insurance you never touched. All of it. She had it all planned out. Which facility you'd go to. How long before we could declare you incompetent, when we could sell the house. And you went along with it. He flinched, but didn't let go. She started small. Little criticisms about you. How you were holding me back. How you were too involved in our marriage. Then it escalated. She'd twist everything. If I defended you, she'd cry and say I didn't love her, that I was choosing my mother over my wife. If I agreed with her, she'd reward me with affection, tell me I was finally becoming a real man. Classic manipulation, I said, my voice clinical, distant. I know that now. The accident. The pain meds wearing off. It's like I'm waking up from a nightmare. Mum. She isolated me from everyone. My friends, my cousins, you. Anyone who might question her. She monitored my phone, my emails. Said it was to help with my anxiety, to protect me from stress. A nurse came in to check his vitals. When she left, Ethan continued. There's more. She's done this before. I found out when the police ran her information after the accident. Sienna Brooks isn't even her real name. It's Sarah Brenneman. She was married twice before. Both elderly mothers-in-law. Both declared incompetent. Both died within a year of being institutionalized. My blood ran cold. She's a serial predator. She targets men with widowed mothers, with inheritance. She probably picked me out at that financial planning seminar where we met. I thought it was fate. She thought it was a gold mine. He reached for something on the nightstand with difficulty. I recorded her, last week, when she thought I was asleep. He pressed play on his phone. Sienna's voice filled the room. 3 more days, and the old bitch will be drooling in a locked ward. I've already got a buyer for the house. Cash offer. Quick close. We'll be in Florida by August, and you can say your mother died peacefully in her sleep. No one questions when old people in memory care pass away. The recording continued, but I'd heard enough. My son had been weak. Yes. Complicit. Absolutely. But he'd also been victimized by a professional manipulator. What do you want me to do? I asked. I want to stop her. I want to make this right. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. Mum, I know what I did was unforgivable. But please, help me stop her before she does this to someone else. I looked at my son, broken in that hospital bed, and made a choice. Not forgiveness. That would take time. Maybe forever. But alliance. First, you're going to write down everything. Every detail, every conversation, every plan she made. Then you're going to call Detective Morrison. And then, Ethan. We're going to destroy her. He squeezed my hand. Mom, I'm so sorry. Save it, I said, not unkindly. Apologies can wait. Right now, we have work to do. She wanted to take everything from me. Well, she forgot one thing. I spent 30 years in corporate administration. I know how to document everything. And thanks to Mrs. Patterson, I've been building a case since day one. As Ethan began to speak into his phone, recording his confession, I thought about Sienna somewhere out there, probably already planning her next move, confident in her victory. She had no idea what was coming. I left the hospital that day without my son. Despite his revelations, despite his tears, I couldn't bring him home. Not to my home. The house that had been my sanctuary had become a crime scene, contaminated by their presence, their plans, their betrayal. Mrs. Patterson took me in. "Stay as long as you need. Evelyn," she said, setting up her guest room with the efficiency of someone who'd raised 5 children. "That woman is a viper. And your boy, well, he's got a long road ahead of him." I spent the first night in Patricia's guest bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment. Not just the recent horrors, but the years before. Where had I gone wrong? When had I taught Ethan that my love was unconditional to the point of self-destruction? When had sacrifice become synonymous with erasure? The next morning, I called Marcus Brennan. "I want them out of my house. Today." "Evelyn, legally, if they've established residency." "They drugged me, Marcus. They conspired to commit fraud. Surely that voids any tenant rights." "I'll file for an emergency restraining order. But Evelyn, you need to be prepared. This is going to get ugly." Ugly didn't begin to describe it. Within 48 hours, Sienna had launched her counterattack. Social media posts about her mentally ill mother-in-law who'd abandoned her injured son. Emails to extended family describing my paranoid delusions. She even called my former employer, claiming I'd been exhibiting signs of dementia during my final years there. But I wasn't the same woman who'd opened her door to them in May. That woman had believed in the goodness of family, in unconditional love, in sacrifice as virtue. This woman knew better. I sat in Patricia's kitchen, laptop open, constructing my own narrative. But where Sienna relied on lies, I had evidence. Security footage from my doorbell camera showing her disposing of my belongings. Bank statements showing unusual withdrawals Ethan had made from our joint account, the one I'd kept for emergencies. Medical records showing the Zolpidem in my system. "You're not eating," Patricia observed, sliding a sandwich in front of me. "I can't. Every time I try, I remember her putting that soup in front of me, watching me drink it, knowing what she'd put in it." Patricia sat down across from me. "You know what your problem was. Evelyn, you were too good a mother." I looked up sharply. "I'm serious. You never let that boy fail. Never let him feel the consequences of his choices. When he dropped out of college the first time, you paid for him to go back. When he lost his job at 25, you covered his rent for 6 months. You cushioned every fall, solved every problem. I was being supportive. You were enabling, and that woman saw it immediately. She saw a man who'd never had to fight for anything, never had to stand up for anything, and she knew exactly how to use that. The truth of it sat heavy in my stomach. I thought sacrifice meant love. Sacrifice without boundaries isn't love, honey. It's slow suicide. That afternoon, Detective Morrison called. "Mrs. Moore, we've been investigating Sarah Brenneman, also known as Sienna Brooks. You're not going to like what we found." My hand tightened on the phone. "Tell me." Both previous mothers-in-law died of overdoses while in memory care facilities. Ruled accidental. But the pattern is clear. She befriends the staff, gains access, and, well, she murders them. Allegedly. We can't prove it yet. But Mrs. Moore, we found something else. She's already been in contact with Sunshine Manor. Specifically, with a night nurse named Kelly Martinez. They've exchanged several messages about special care for incoming patients. My knees went weak. She was going to kill me. We believe so, yes. Once you were committed and she had control of your assets, you would have had an accident, based on the timeline with her previous victims, within 3 to 6 months. I thought of Ethan in that hospital bed, crying about his regrets. Did he know? Did he suspect what the final phase of Sienna's plan was? What about my son? We're investigating his involvement. His confession helps. But Mrs. Moore. He was deep in this. The fact that she drugged him too suggests she was planning to eventually dispose of him as well, once your assets were secured. Of course. Why split the money when you could have it all? That evening, I made a decision. I called Martha Crawford, an old friend who worked at the Burlington Herald. Martha, I have a story for you about a woman who preys on families, who turns sons against mothers, who may have killed before. I have documents, recordings, evidence. Evelyn, are you sure this will go public? Your son's involvement will be exposed. I know. But other families need to be warned. Other mothers need to know what to look for. As I hung up, I thought about the Evelyn from 6 months ago, the one who made pot roast every Sunday, who kept her complaints quiet, who believed loving someone meant accepting any treatment they gave you. That woman had died somewhere between the locked bedroom door and the ambulance lights. The woman who remained was harder, clearer, and finally understood that the first person she needed to save was herself. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Ethan's number. My thumb hovered over it for a long moment before I typed, "The police know everything. The paper will publish tomorrow. If you're truly sorry, you'll tell the complete truth. No minimizing, no excuses. The mother you knew is gone. The woman who remains has no room for men who would trade their mother's freedom for their wife's approval. Your father would be ashamed." I hit send and then blocked his number. Some bridges, once burned, couldn't be rebuilt. They could only light the way forward. Patricia found me on her porch that night, watching the stars. "You okay?" "I will be," I said, and for the first time in months, I meant it. Tomorrow. Sienna's face would be in the paper, her past exposed, her crimes revealed. She'd lose everything, her reputation, her freedom, possibly her life if convicted. But I'd lost something too. The son I thought I'd raised, the family I thought I'd built. The naive belief that love alone could save someone determined to destroy themselves. "I'm not just going to survive this," I told Patricia. "I'm going to win." The Burlington Herald article hit the stands at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. By 8, Sienna's carefully constructed world was crumbling. Martha had done her work thoroughly. 3 victims, 3 states, 1 pattern. The headline read, "Local Woman Suspected in Multi-State Elder Fraud Scheme." I sat in Marcus Brennan's office, watching the news coverage on his mounted TV. Sienna's pharmaceutical company had already released a statement distancing themselves. Her social media accounts were flooding with outrage from people who'd believed her lies about me. "The restraining order is in effect," Marcus said, sliding papers across his mahogany desk. "She has 72 hours to vacate your property. I've also filed civil suits for fraud, elder abuse, and intentional infliction of emotional distress." "What about criminal charges?" "Detective Morrison is building the case. With Ethan's cooperation and the evidence you've compiled, she's looking at attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy charges." I signed where he indicated, my hand steady. "I want to add something to my will." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Ethan gets nothing. Not the house, not the insurance, not even my mother's jewelry I'd saved for his future wife. Everything goes to the Domestic Violence Prevention Fund." "That's quite final." "Evelyn?" "So was drugging me and planning my imprisonment." But I wasn't done. That afternoon, I met with Dr. Sarah Hendricks, a psychiatrist who specialized in coercive control and manipulation. I need documentation, I told her. Every symptom of trauma, every sign of abuse, everything Sienna did to me. Not for court, for protection. Dr. Hendricks listened for 2 hours, taking careful notes. Mrs. Moore, what you're describing is systematic psychological torture. This woman didn't just want your assets. She wanted to destroy your sense of self. She nearly succeeded. But she didn't. And now you're fighting back. That takes remarkable strength. Strength. 6 months ago, I thought strength meant enduring in silence. Now I knew it meant setting the world on fire to save yourself. That evening, I returned to my house for the first time since the ambulance took me away. Patricia insisted on coming with me. The place felt foreign, contaminated. Sienna's things were being boxed up by a moving company. Marcus had arranged it to avoid any direct confrontation. In my bedroom, not theirs, I found something that stopped me cold. My husband Richard's watch, the one Sienna claimed to have thrown away, was sitting on my dresser with a note. You'll need this for evidence. She kept it as a trophy. Check the master bathroom ceiling tile. 3rd from the left. E. Ethan. Even now, trying to help while everything burned around him. Patricia helped me check the ceiling tile. Inside was a box containing jewelry I thought I'd lost, documents Sienna had hidden, and a journal. Her journal. I sat on my bed, reading her words, each entry more chilling than the last. Day 12. E's mother is stronger than expected. Previous targets broke faster. Need to increase psychological pressure. Day 45. Convinced E she's showing signs of dementia. He's started correcting her memory of events. Gaslighting successful. Day 73. She knows. The old bitch knows what I'm doing. But E won't believe her. Men never believe their mothers over their wives. Evolutionary psychology at its finest. Day 95. 2 more weeks and she'll be gone. Already have buyer lined up for house. E thinks we'll live here. Idiot doesn't realize he's next. Grieving widower has accident 6 months after mother's death. Tragic. Profitable. I photographed every page, sent them to Marcus and Detective Morrison. This wasn't just evidence, it was a confession. The next morning, I had contractors at the house. I want every room she touched gutted and rebuilt. I told them. New paint, new floors, new everything? That'll cost a fortune. The foreman warned. Then it costs a fortune. While they worked, I met with a forensic accountant. We traced every penny Sienna had tried to redirect, every account she'd accessed using Ethan's information, every financial manipulation she'd attempted. She was systematic, he said, showing me spreadsheets that mapped her theft. But she got greedy. The paper trail is extensive. How much? Between direct theft and attempted fraud, close to $200,000. I thought of all the small sacrifices I'd made over the years to save that money. Every overtime shift, every skipped vacation, every generic brand chosen over name brand. All so my son and his wife could steal it. That afternoon, Detective Morrison called with news. We arrested her an hour ago. She was trying to board a flight to Costa Rica. No extradition treaty. Exactly. But here's the interesting part. She wasn't alone. Kelly Martinez, the nurse from Sunshine Manor, was with her. They were lovers. Evelyn. This whole thing was a team operation. The final piece clicked into place. She was never going to stay with Ethan. No. The plan was to dispose of both of you, take everything, and disappear. Your son was just a tool, same as you were just an obstacle. That evening, I sat in my gutted kitchen, surrounded by plastic sheets and construction dust. When my phone rang, the caller ID showed the county jail. I almost didn't answer. Then curiosity won. Mrs. Moore. Sienna's voice was different, harder, the mask completely gone. You think you've won? I think you're in jail, facing life in prison. She laughed, cold and sharp. Your son will never recover from this. He'll never forgive himself. He'll never forgive you for exposing him. I've destroyed your relationship permanently. You're right, I said simply. But here's what you didn't count on. Sienna, or Sarah, or whatever your real name is. I'm okay with that. My son chose you over me. He chose money over his mother. That's not a relationship worth saving. You'll die alone. Maybe. But I'll die free. In my own home. With my dignity intact. You'll die in a cage, remembering the woman who put you there. Every day for the rest of your life. You'll know that Evelyn Moore beat you. I hung up and blocked the number. Tomorrow. I would meet with prosecutors to ensure she never walked free. Next week. I would restart my life without the son I'd loved too much and the daughter-in-law who'd tried to bury me alive. But tonight, I would stand in my destroyed and rebuilding kitchen, and I would breathe. I was no longer the silent mother, the sacrificing mother, the accepting mother. I was Evelyn Moore, and I had won. The invitation went out 2 weeks before the dinner. Heavy cream cardstock, professional calligraphy, the kind of formal announcement that demanded attention. Evelyn Moore requests the pleasure of your company for an important family announcement. Saturday, November 11th, 7 p.m. The Wellington Room at the Burlington Club. Formal attire requested. I sent them to everyone. Richard's siblings, my cousins from Boston, Ethan's godparents, friends who'd watched him grow up, and, of course, Ethan himself. Though his invitation went through his lawyer, he was out on bail, awaiting trial for his role in the conspiracy. I didn't send one to Sienna. She was being held without bail, deemed a flight risk after her Costa Rica attempt. Patricia helped me prepare. You sure about this? Evelyn public humiliation. Not humiliation. Truth. There's a difference. I'd spent weeks planning every detail. The venue was Burlington's most prestigious private dining room, where Richard had proposed 39 years ago. The menu was deliberately elegant, nothing like the heavy, unhealthy food Sienna had criticized. The seating chart was strategic, placing Ethan between his godparents, people who'd loved him since birth but wouldn't let him escape. I hired a court reporter to document everything. If this was going to be the end, it would be official. Saturday arrived crisp and cold. I wore the black Chanel suit Richard had bought me for our 25th anniversary, the one Sienna had called dated and tried to donate to Goodwill. My hair was professionally styled, my grandmother's pearls at my throat. I looked like what I was, a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. The guests arrived in clusters, confused but curious. The whispers started immediately. Everyone had heard something, the arrest, the scandal, the newspaper articles. But no one knew the full truth. Ethan arrived at 6:58, looking gaunt in his father's old suit. His godmother, Helen, gripped his arm like she was afraid he'd bolt. He probably would have. Hello, Ethan, I said, my voice carrying across the room. Mom, his voice cracked. I didn't think you'd want me here. This concerns you. Sit. The dinner began with stilted conversation and nervous glances. I let them eat, let the wine loosen tongues and lower guards. Then, as dessert was served, I stood. Thank you all for coming. I know you're wondering why I've gathered you here tonight. The room fell silent. 6 months ago, my son Ethan and his wife Sienna moved into my home. What followed was a systematic attempt to destroy me, financially, emotionally, and nearly physically. Gasps rippled through the room. Ethan's face went white. I pulled out a remote and clicked. A screen descended from the ceiling. I'd prepared a presentation. Marcus had called it overkill. I called it thorough. Let me show you what family means to my son. The first slide, Sienna's journal entry about disposing of me. The second, bank records showing Ethan's withdrawals. The third, a photo of the power of attorney papers, partially signed. Mum, please. Ethan started to stand. Sit down. My voice was steel. You wanted my house? You're going to sit in this room and face everyone who ever loved you while I explain what you tried to do to the woman who gave you life. I clicked through more evidence. The drugging, the gaslighting, the plan to institutionalize me. Several relatives were crying. Richard's brother looked murderous. But here's what you don't know, I continued, my voice steady despite the tears threatening. Sienna planned to kill me. And then, Ethan. She planned to kill you too. I played the recording from her journal. Her voice filled the room. He thinks we'll live here. Idiot doesn't realize he's next. Ethan's sob echoed in the silence that followed. Your wife, the woman you chose over your mother, saw you as nothing but a tool, a means to an end. You weren't her partner. You were her next victim. Helen was holding Ethan as he shook. Part of me wanted to comfort him. That part of me was dead. I've brought you all here to witness the official end of my relationship with my son. As of tonight, Ethan Thomas Moore is no longer my child. He is removed from my will, banned from my property, and erased from my life. Evelyn, Richard's sister Margaret, stood. He's your only child. Surely, my only child conspired to have me locked in a memory ward where his wife planned to murder me. My only child drugged me, gaslit me, and stood by while I was abused in my own home. My only child chose money over mother, a manipulator over the woman who raised him alone after his father died. I turned to Ethan. You want to know the saddest part? I would have given you everything. The house, the money, all of it. All you had to do was ask. But instead, you tried to take it. And in doing so, you lost it all. Mum, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll do anything. Anything. I laughed, bitter and cold. Then tell everyone here the truth. Tell them what you did to me. Every detail. Every betrayal. Stand up and confess to the people who loved you. He stood slowly, swaying like a drunk man. I helped my wife try to steal from my mother. I convinced her she was showing signs of dementia when she wasn't. I signed papers trying to take control of her finances. I watched her be drugged and did nothing. His voice broke completely. I chose a woman who was planning to kill us both over the mother who loved me unconditionally, and I can never forgive myself. Good, I said simply. Neither can I. I gathered my purse, my coat. The dinner is paid for. Feel free to stay and discuss what you've learned. Ethan, your belongings from childhood are in boxes by the door. Take them and never contact me again. As I walked toward the exit, Ethan called out one last time. What about forgiveness? What about redemption? I turned at the door, meeting his eyes one final time. Forgiveness, that's between you and God. Redemption, that's between you and yourself. But neither is between you and me. Not anymore. You'll regret this, he said desperately. You'll die alone, wishing you'd forgiven me. I smiled then. The first real smile in months. I'd rather die alone with my dignity than live surrounded by people who would sell me for their comfort. Goodbye. Ethan, may you get exactly what you deserve. I walked out into the November night, the cold air sharp and clean against my skin. Behind me, I could hear the explosion of voices, the accusations, the chaos I'd left in my wake. But ahead of me was silence. Beautiful, peaceful silence. Tomorrow, there would be consequences. Family members who thought I was too harsh. Friends who'd choose sides. The trial that would drag everything into public view. But tonight, I stood in the parking lot of the Burlington Club, looking up at the stars Richard and I used to wish on, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Free. I may have lost my son for a while, I said to the night sky, to Richard, to myself. But I will never lose myself again. And with that, I drove home to my empty, peaceful, sienna-free house, where no one would ever again mistake my kindness for weakness. The parking lot of the Burlington Club was nearly empty now. Just a few cars scattered like forgotten promises under the yellow streetlights. I stood beside my Mercedes, the one Sienna had called pretentious for a woman your age, and breathed in the November air. It tasted like winter coming, like endings and beginnings all at once. My heels clicked against the pavement as I walked to the driver's door, each step a declaration of independence. Through the restaurant's windows, I could see the chaos I'd left behind. Ethan collapsed in his chair, Helen and Margaret flanking him like guards, Richard's brother James gesturing angrily, the court reporter still documenting everything, just as I'd paid her to do. Let them talk. Let them judge. Let them choose sides. I was done caring about their opinions. The drive home was silent, except for the purr of the engine. No radio, no music. Just the sound of my own breathing, steady and calm. The city lights blurred past, like memories I was finally ready to release. My house stood dark against the night sky, but it wasn't ominous anymore. It was mine. Every room, every corner, every inch that Sienna had tried to steal. The contractors had finished last week. New paint in warm colours I chose. New furniture that didn't match anyone's aesthetic but mine. New locks that would never open for betrayal again. I pulled into the garage and sat for a moment in the darkness. 6 months ago, I would have rushed inside to prepare something for someone else. To make sure Ethan's old room was ready in case he needed it. To keep myself busy enough not to think about the echoing emptiness. Not tonight. Tonight. I walked through my front door like a queen returning to her castle. The security system chimed its welcome. A system only I knew the code to. The lights came on with my movement. Sensors I'd had installed so I'd never walk into darkness again. In the kitchen, I poured myself a glass of the expensive Bordeaux I'd been saving for a special occasion. Richard had bought it for our 40th anniversary that never came. Save it for something important, he'd said before the cancer took him. This qualified. I carried the wine to the living room, where every trace of Sienna's presence had been erased. My photos were back on the mantel. Richard in his Navy uniform. Ethan as a baby before he learned to betray. My parents on their wedding day. The furniture was new but comfortable, chosen for my body, my comfort, my aesthetic. On the coffee table sat a manila envelope Patricia had dropped off earlier. Inside were brochures for a senior community in Sedona, Arizona. Not a nursing home, a luxury retirement village where women like me lived on their own terms, where no one could move in uninvited, where the past was whatever you decided to share and nothing more. I'd already put the house on the market. This colonial held too many ghosts, not just Richard's, but the ghost of the mother I used to be, the woman who thought sacrifice was noble, silence was strength, and family was everything. My phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. Sienna took the plea deal, 25 years, no parole. Ethan got 2 years probation and mandatory therapy. It's over. Over. Such a simple word for such a complex ending. I deleted the message and blocked Marcus's number too. Even my lawyer was part of the past now. Tomorrow, a new attorney in Sedona would handle the sale, the move, the clean slate I was building. The doorbell rang at 9:43 p. I knew who it would be before I checked the camera. Helen stood on my porch, Ethan beside her, his face swollen from crying. I watched them through the app on my phone, watched Helen ring again, watched Ethan raise his fist to knock, then drop it, watched them stand there for 10 minutes before Helen finally led him away. They'd try again. Tomorrow, next week, next month. Family members would call, write letters, stage interventions. They'd tell me about forgiveness, about second chances, about how Richard would have wanted me to reconcile. But Richard was dead, and the woman he'd married had died too, somewhere between a drugged bowl of soup and a hospital room confession. The woman who remained, she was someone new, someone who chose herself first, someone who understood that blood meant nothing if it was willing to spill yours, someone who knew that being alone was better than being surrounded by users and manipulators. I finished my wine and stood, looking around my reclaimed kingdom. Tomorrow, the realtor would come to take photos. Next week, I'd start packing. By New Year's, I'd be in Sedona, where the rocks were red as the blood I'd refused to let them drain from me. But tonight, I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, and stood at the window overlooking the street. In the distance, I could see taillights disappearing, carrying away the son I'd raised and lost. I may have lost my son for a while. I whispered to my reflection in the glass, but I will never lose myself again. And in that moment, standing in my empty house with my full heart, I realized something. I hadn't lost anything at all. I'd gained everything that mattered. My freedom, my dignity, my self-respect. The reflection looking back at me wasn't the exhausted, defeated woman from 6 months ago. This was someone harder. Yes. Someone less trusting. Certainly. But someone who would never again mistake abuse for love or manipulation for family. This was Evelyn Moore. Survivor. Victor. Free. I smiled at her. At me. And turned away from the window. Tomorrow would bring new battles, new choices, new chances to choose myself. But tonight, in the silence of my victory, I was exactly who I needed to be. Alone, undefeated, and finally free. The stars outside continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the human drama below. And somewhere in Burlington, a son would have to live with his choices, A predator would count the days in a cell, and a mother would rise from the ashes of who she used to be. This wasn't a happy ending. It was something better. It was a real ending, and it was mine. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I know it wasn't easy to hear, but sometimes the hardest truths are the most important ones to share. I'm curious. Where are you listening from? Please comment below and let me know what country or city you're in. I love connecting with people from all over the world who understand that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if this story resonated with you. And please share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to choose yourself over toxic family? Your stories matter too, and I'd love to hear them.